Hello and welcome to our very first show here on Steven's Sports Network. Today I'm going to introduce the end of the college football bowl season. This winter we're going to have a lot of exciting topics to talk about, including the current NHL season, which will go on halt for the month of February for the Winter Olympics in Sochi, Russia. Also to talk about is college basketball, the exciting NFL playoffs, which are heating up, and obviously the Winter Olympics, which are coming up in February. And as I said before, today's show is going to be discussing the current major bowl games and the final one of the BCS Bowl era for the 2013 NCAA football season. There are 234 more days left until college football returns. The first game is the Rose Bowl, which is between number 4 Michigan State and number 5 Stanford. And the problem with Michigan State starting in the game was that they played a very tight defensive front, which was very easy for Stanford to attack them deep. Stanford, who plays a spread offense, could find easy holes in that defense, and they used the draw play with Gaffney several times, which opened up holes down the center, which he scored a touchdown on in the second drive of the game. Another touchdown he found, the quarterback found Rector on man-on-man coverage because the defense was playing, like I said, tight up front, deep 8 coverage. They're playing a cover 2 deep, which resulted in a man-on-man coverage with Rector, who was on one-on-one on defense. The other problem that Michigan State had was early that they did not have any momentum, and they did not score a touchdown late into the second quarter. Lanford just outran the defense on several great plays, and he was led by great blocks by his fullback Pendleton for much of that game. Connor Cook, he tried to force several passes that he probably shouldn't have, but he still ended up having a good game. He threw a pick, resulted to forcing a pass. And they had several easy first downs due to holes in Stanford's defense. And Stanford played tight defense the first half, and then they slowed down in the second half, which I've noticed has been with a lot of teams in this bowl season. They allowed a touchdown early on in the second half, which resulted in Michigan State coming back to tie the game. Ending the game, Connor Cook was 22 for 36, had 332 yards and 2 touchdowns. Kevin Hogan of Stanford was 10 out of 18 for 143 yards and an interception. Not very good numbers for Hogan. Gaffney had 24 yards rushing for Stanford, and he had 91 yards and a touchdown. And Jeremy Langford for Michigan State had 23 rushes and 84 yards and a touchdown. And of course, Tony Lippett of Michigan State having 5 receiving receptions for 94 yards and a touchdown. So the second game was the Tostitos Fiesta Bowl between UCF and Baylor. Baylor, obviously, one of the more stronger offenses in the country. They are coming out of the Big 12 after one of their best seasons yet. Probably their best season since losing RG3 2 years ago. UCF has a good quarterback in Blake Bortles, who has a kind of a Ben Roethlisberger-like prospect. And the beginning of the game, Baylor played out of a nickel defense, which allowed a lot of long runs by Bortles, which was a result to reading the defense and finding the forced reads that was coming up from the front 8 of that Baylor defense. The outside blitzes allowed a lot of runs up the center, which were, like I said, base runs and dive plays, which were killer for that Baylor defense. And Bortles hung in the pocket, and he attacked the man coverage the entire first half. But he did have 1 or 2 interceptions due to bad reads. The flat was open for Baylor because they were not covering the flat. UCF was not covering the flat. They were playing more of a deep cover 4 defense or cover 3 on most plays, which allowed, like I said, the flat to be opened up, and they had a screen pass for a touchdown. There was poor coverage in cover 2 by Baylor in the second half, which allowed for a corner route touchdown. And the low-cut tackles by UCF resulted in one too many extended plays by Baylor. The problem was Randall Hall just could not get it open on a screen pass in the second half, and Josh Reese attacked the under pursuit of the seam and made an interception by Bryce Petty. And stats from that game. Bortles was 20 of 31 for 301 yards. Not the consistency in the percentage that we saw him this year, but still very good numbers. He had 3 touchdowns. He did have 2 interceptions, but to make up for that, he had 8 rushes for 93 yards and a touchdown. Bryce Petty, a little different story. He was 30 of 47, which isn't as good of numbers. He was 356 yards and 2 touchdowns and an interception. He did, however, have 3 rushing touchdowns. And Randall Hall had 4 receptions for 113 yards and 2 touchdowns. The third game is the All-State Sugar Bowl between the Alabama Crimson Tide, coming in off of a tough loss 5 weeks ago against Auburn. They are currently ranked 3, and Oklahoma, who is ranked 11th. Beginning of the game, Alabama got a early start, but Oklahoma just kept fighting back. Oklahoma, the one thing they did really well with from the start was they're capping the receiver with a free safety, which Alabama has not played a team yet this season that has had tight defensive coverage in the secondary. The bubble screen was effective in their cover 4. That was the one thing that was going okay for Alabama on offense, was McCarron would call an audible for a bubble screen. And he would find a fullback or a running back on that play. And they did not cap underneath with a cornerback, which resulted in a lot of underneath passes from Oklahoma. Oklahoma did have a good call in the second half for an end around to clear Alabama's defense to the left, which opened up a clear hole to the right way, which allowed Knight for a touchdown pass to Jalen Sanders. And there was weak coverage on the left side of the defense, which left McCarron audible to cut back run to get it away for an easy touchdown for Alabama. McCarron read the cover 3 defense all day, but he did not read He did not read that the quarterback was going to be covering the pass as well as he was, and that resulted in interception in the second half. McCarron in that game was 19 of 30. That was one of his worst games for his bowl career. However, he did have 387 yards and 2 touchdowns, but he had 2 interceptions and a fumble on top of that. Knight was 32 of 44. He had 348 touchdowns and, get this, 4 touchdowns. Jalen Sanders, 2 receptions and for touchdowns. That resulted in touchdowns. Again, Knight was 348 yards passing. Obviously, the clear MVP of that game. Now we'll go to the FedEx Orange Bowl in Miami. Number 12, Clemson taking on number 7, Ohio State. Braxton Miller stuttered step the defense all game long to get them confused and to get them to overread the pressure. And the zone read offense left Taj Boyd. Let him take the option and drive the center of the defense, which was open all game long. Taj Boyd found Sammy Watkins on man coverage to get him wide open for a touchdown at one point. And that was due to a respectable defense by Ohio State, which has been that way all season long. But they disrespected the Clemson run game way too much, and they fell into the trap of play action. And Braxton Miller just obviously tried to force way too much. He had way too many chances that they were just right into the hands of the defensemen of Clemson, which resulted in interceptions or bad plays. He tried to force too much, and he just played the price multiple times. Clemson, however, they did blitz with a free safety a lot, and that gave Braxton Miller a lot less time in the pocket to make decisions. And Clemson found Jeff Heuerman on a touchdown in the second half, which was a good catch by him as he read that free safety blitz. I'm sorry, that was from Ohio State. Ohio State had Jeff Heuerman on a touchdown. The defense got a lot of respect for Ohio State's run game, which was quite obvious in the second half as they completely just shut down Braxton Miller and Hyde. And the flat was open with Bryant because of his height, which allowed him wide open for a touchdown in the second half. And Stephon Anthony, play of the game, was the interception from the last drive from Braxton Miller. Taj Boyd in that game was 31 of 40, and he had 378 yards and 5 touchdowns, 127 rushing yards, and another touchdown on top of that. Sammy Watkins had 16 receptions for 227 yards. 16 receptions. That is a high for this bowl season and a high for the BCS era. He had 2 touchdowns on top of that. Carlos Hyde had 25 carries for 113 yards and a touchdown. Braxton Miller, 16 of 24, 234 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. And of course, the big shebang last night was the BCS National Championship game in Pasadena, California, in the Rose Bowl. Number 1 Florida State taking on 2 Auburn. The first half, I do not know how to say this better, but Auburn just completely dominated on both sides of the football. Florida State was struggling. They were having problems. They were not getting plays off in time. They were having penalties, senseless penalties. They were basically shooting themselves in the foot the entire first half. They had a strong force read defense, but that was not good enough because Nick Marshall just kept reading it like a pro all game long. Then you see the play that kind of swings the momentum. There was a fake punt in the late second quarter that resulted in a first down for Florida State. They had a first down, and then they scored a touchdown on that drive, which made them back in the game, made it 21-10, ending the first half. That was not the place that Florida State wanted to be in the first half, but they did manage to get some momentum late in that half. That punt, obviously just a big momentum change the entire game, as Auburn just could not get it together on offense as much. They scored 10 points in the second half in comparison to the 21 they got in the first, whereas Florida State put up great numbers in the second half, and you saw them rally at the end, and they got a touchdown with less than 15 seconds to play. And that was Jameson Winston was 20 of 35 and 237 yards for 2 touchdowns and 26 rushing yards. Devonta Freeman had a touchdown, and Kelvon Benjamin, the all-important touchdown to go ahead with 13 seconds left. And Rashad Green, 9 receptions for 147 yards. Great receiving stats there for Green. Nick Marshall of Auburn had 14 of 27 yards, 217 yards on that game, 2 touchdowns, 45 rushing yards, and a touchdown. Trey Mason, 195 yards rushing and a touchdown, clearly the rushing leader of the BCS National Championship. So that's it. The BCS had a good run, and next year we'll go to a playoff series for college football. We thank you for joining us today, and we will bring you a show next week on Monday. We're going to have a weekly show every week on this channel, on YouTube every week, weekly. Thank you for your time, and we hope that you have a great week. And let's see you next week.